Good afternoon. I welcome you to Kirkville United Methodist Church. This is our Wednesday afternoon Bible study, and we're studying the Gospel of Luke. We used to broadcast this study, but we found that there were some breaks in it in sound and visual that we actually did better by recording it and then posting it at another time. So those of you who are watching us online, if you read ahead, you can always text or email your questions or observations, anticipating what we'll be studying. That way we can also include them. And you can mail them to us at kirkvilleumc@gmail.com. That's kirkvilleumc@gmail.com. And so we thank you for joining with us, and we pray that you are having a meaningful Holy Week experience. And I know we're planning some things, and we're looking for a great celebration of the resurrection, both with our sunrise service at 6:15. That was it. 6:15.
6:45. He changed it.
No.
I know it doesn't look there. Anyway, go ahead.
And it's not because online it says it wasn't going to be till 6:18 the sunrise. Have they changed it again? I don't know. Anyway, 6:15, and over at the cemetery if you want to join us. And then we'll have our regular resurrection service at 10. A lot of music we have for this Sunday. And then we also have we have a breakfast. So you're welcome. I'll post this before that time, so if you want to join us, you're welcome to do so. This Sunday, we looked at the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, so we are reading that and studying that. And then I preached on Jesus at the temple. And we understand how he went into the temple and that he turned over the tables and chased out the merchants from there. I took my sermon on Sunday and I wrote 2 devotions on it. And they can be found both on Facebook, and they were sent out email-wise. And the third one will be section of that will be tomorrow. So I'll conclude that study on anger tomorrow. So we're picking up after Jesus entered Jerusalem and after he cleared out the temple. And now we begin in chapter 20. And this is how it reads. One day as he was teaching the people in the temple courts and preaching the gospel, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, together with the elders, came up to him. "Tell us by what authority you are doing these things," they said. "Who gave you this authority?" He replied, "I will also ask you a question. Tell me, John's baptism, was it from heaven or was it from men?" They discussed it among themselves and said, "If we say from heaven, he will ask, then why didn't you believe him? But if we say from men, all the people will stone us because they are persuaded that John was a prophet." So they answered, "We don't know where it was from." Jesus said, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." Now this is also realized Jesus had already entered the temple, and he had already cleared the temple after this procession throng that was following after him. So they witnessed his clearing out the temple. Then he retreated back to Bethany. So he'd stay in Bethany, and then he'd come back into Jerusalem. So he was at the hotel of Mary and Martha and Lazarus when he was in Bethany. And so he then is challenged the next time he comes in to town the next day. He is challenged by those leaders. What authority are you doing these things? By what authority did you clear the temple? By what authority are you proclaiming and teaching? So that is an important thing to ask. By what authority? Because they're trying to say, what right do you have to come in and do this?
Why did he just say my Father's authority?
That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked that. Why didn't he say, by my Father's authority?
Because they wouldn't believe him. You think that's why?
They wouldn't believe him.
They didn't want to.
That might also facilitate they might have to respond with calling him blasphemous, and it's in the temple, and might have to do something. But Jesus is always doing things to make us think. And also Jesus wants us to respond. So Why did he ask them a question? By what authority did John baptize? So you're questioning my authority. What about John's?
If they can't answer him, then he doesn't have to answer them.
That's
Right,
true.
he's throwing it back at them, saying, I don't have to answer this, you should already know this.
If you answer me, then I'll answer
I'll
you.
answer you.
Yeah. So they have a problem in that they discussed among themselves when he asked them that, by what authority do you consider John did his baptism? They then talked with one another, right? I can say whisper,
Yeah, right, we don't wanna-
back and forth,
Yeah.
to come up with a consensus, an answer.
Well, if they said from heaven, they said, he'll ask why we didn't believe John. And that's true. Why didn't they believe John?
Yep.
You know, so if it's a human, then the people will be angry
Mhm.
because they believe John is a prophet.
Correct. So, but they could have answered in a different way. Why would they say, oh, we believe that John's baptism was true, and so we have taken his message to heart, and we are repenting and confessing ourselves.
Then
But
why'd
they're
you ask
not.
me
But they
the
didn't
question
do
in the
that.
first place then? They could say, why'd you ask me in the first place if you already believed it?
Well, believed in John's,
Yeah.
but what about his
What
authority?
about me?
So they didn't have time to think it through too much to come up with an answer. It's kind of like what we see in TV sometimes with politicians and other things. They're asked questions and they're not prepared for an answer, and so you do one on the fly. When you do one on the fly, what happens?
Whoops, it comes back.
You don't
Usually
answer
is not a very good answer.
You dance around it. You
You
don't
dance
answer.
around it.
Well, they knew that he was trying to trick them in the same manner that they were trying to trick him.
Yeah, right.
Very good, Bonnie. Yes.
Yeah.
He was trying to trick them as much as he was trying to trick them. He wanted them to come up and be honest. Decide what you believe, and then stand for what you believe.
Right.
Don't be afraid of the crowd. If it's the truth and you don't believe in who he is, then say it. Because only by truth can we then discern the truth. If we always are in decision, in the state of indecision, then what happens is we never come to the truth. So they're denying their own truthfulness. It's like if all of a sudden someone was to ask us if we believe in Jesus and such, and we just say, no. Well, I believe in Jesus, I know he existed, but we don't really come out and tell them who Jesus is to us. We're betraying ourselves as well as betraying God. In another section, he also said, whoever acknowledges me, I will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Whoever does not acknowledge me, I will not acknowledge before my Father in heaven.
Right.
So this is a public ability to be able to acknowledge. And John's baptism was a public commitment. Okay?
That's what the Pharisees admitted that they, believed in their, how are they going to accuse him of blasphemy and stuff? Because they were, well, okay, you believe I am, so
Yeah.
why are you,
Yeah.
And
how could you?
John
be a
told
liar?
them, someone greater than I will be coming.
Yes. It's interesting because also
They didn't think about that.
there's also Pharisees and teachers of the law that came to see John. Some of them were baptized. Matter of fact, John said, if we go back to there to read it, why have you come and been baptized? Repent and do what you know you're supposed to do. So they could have said, like I pointed out, is that they could have said, well, we listened and many of us heard. They brought back the news and we are committed. We are, and then that would put Jesus a little bit on the a hot spot of being able to declare clearly, answer their question.
But he knew they weren't committed.
No.
He knew.
And they knew that too, because by their very asking that question, when they gave that answer, they knew. We know when we have not said the right thing.
Right.
We know when we have cheated ourselves. We know when we have not been honest to ourselves. But we can never have a clean, clear, pure relationship, intimate relationship with God, unless we're first honest with ourselves. So many people do not have that intimate relationship with God because they cannot be honest with themselves.
Well, they also don't want to admit that they've been wrong, that they've sinned, they, haven't done what they should be doing.
So if
And,
they,
you know, that they
That's
have to
true.
admit that, well, gee, this is
if
myself.
if they had admitted that John's baptism was from heaven, his preaching was from heaven, then Jesus would be able to turn around and then how come, if I'm preaching the same message, how come you're not believing in
Right.
me?
John told you someone,
And then they'd have to
I
say,
agree.
well, we shouldn't have these merchants in here. We shouldn't be doing this. You see?
Right.
But that would lead them to if they said, well, we believe it was from God, then says, then why haven't you repented? Why did I have to come in here and find this mess in the temple? You see?
Right.
So it would have taken them to be accountable. And no one wants to be accountable.
no,
No?
it's hard for all of us, but we have to realize that.
Particularly those who are in a position of authority to be held accountable. Instead of coming out and saying, we didn't know, or I made a mistake. Okay?
Especially if it makes
Instead-
yeah.
We try to dance around things, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lesson not just for politicians in our climate now, and I'm not aiming it towards Democratic, there's enough Republican ones as well. I'm just saying that we tend to be dishonest with ourselves and dishonest with others.
Mhm.
And as Christians, we are called to be honest with God, honest with ourselves. Next, he goes on to another teaching. He went on to tell this parable. A man planted a vineyard, rented it to some tenants, and went away for a long time. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants so they could give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. No, it says some of the fruit, not all the fruit. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. I wonder what they thought was going to happen. Oh, he's just going to ignore it? Or is he going to do something? He sent another servant, but that one also they beat and treated shamefully and sent away empty-handed. Then he sent a third. I would glad I was not that third. Aren't you? If they did what they did to the other two, guess what you can anticipate when you go? And they wounded him and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, what shall I do? I will send my son, whom I love. Perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they talked the matter over. This is the heir, they said. Let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours. So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to others. Okay? Now, what's surprising here is the gospel accounts will have a different answer. This is how Luke puts it. When the people heard this, they said, may this never be. Okay? Now, what do you think they meant by may this never be? Is it that may this never be that the servants reject, okay, what they owe the owner of the vineyard? Or may it never be that they would then kill the son?
The son,
What do you think?
yeah,
What do you think they were hearing?
Killing the son,
Jesus.
that's Jesus.
yeah.
And so Jesus was trying to show them that he's the son. The prophets that you just talked about, John as a prophet, you acknowledge him as a prophet, then he's also declaring that by what authority? I am the son. My Father has sent me. He sent you prophets, but now he sent me, and you are going to kill the son. And the people still have not turned on Jesus, have they?
People haven't.
Because they say, may this never be. We know that in a few short days, their opinion is going to change.
It will be.
Why don't you think about what changed their opinion? Some people feel that what they did is they locked the people out when they were doing the trial, and they stacked the deck, if you would, of people who they paid or coerced to be there to shout, crucify him, crucify him.
That they wanted Barabbas, the killer.
Yes, but maybe not. Maybe the parade that saw him come in also began to reject him. I just want you to think about that. Go ahead, Pam, you're gonna say something.
I was gonna say that the people who, the higher ups there who threw them out of the temple and everything, they realized eventually that Jesus was talking about them.
Oh yeah, they knew very
They
clearly.
knew that,
Yes.
so, I think they were very fearful of that.
So what happens is that they knew that what he was talking about is those servants were prophets. And the last prophet was John.
Yeah,
And they wouldn't even acknowledge whether his baptism was from heaven.
right.
So then after that he sent the Son. So he's clearly just describing his authority as being that of the Son.
Right.
But they're not listening, they're not hearing that. Okay? Because what happens for Jesus to come out and say, well, I am the Son of God, I am God in human flesh, I have that authority. That would not, they would reject that. They need to come to that on their own accord. It's just like anyone that we witness to. There are people have to come to that conclusion of the truth on their own.
Oh,
We can't talk anyone into heaven.
right.
Okay, I want to repeat that. We can't talk anyone into heaven. We can talk about Jesus. We can give our witness. We can even share reasoning from the scriptures. But they have to come to that own conclusion. We cannot talk anyone into their salvation. Charlie, you look like you were thinking deeply.
It's by their works and deeds that they will get along the path to heaven.
No, it's not our works and deeds.
No, the individual's works
We have
and
to make a
deeds.
choice.
Two
of
choices,
faith.
right, to the choice.
And then our works and deeds
They have to
are
open
come
their
differently
heart.
because they're not from earning heaven, but
Right.
rather because we already have heaven and we've already been
Yeah.
loved.
Yeah. They have to open their heart and accept Jesus as their Savior.
Yes.
But by our works and deeds, we can kind of show them
Mm-hmm.
what it means to
Yes.
be in
Yes, you
Jesus
can set a
Christ.
good example,
Yes. Yes.
but they have to.
You see, there's
open their
people who
hearts.
do not have faith in Jesus who can do good works and deeds. We don't have the corner of the market on it.
Yeah,
However, if we have faith, we should be doing good works and deeds. Okay? But we don't get to appreciation of who Jesus really is, and the power of forgiveness and the power of the Holy Spirit that comes upon us until we are willing to admit that our deeds are never sufficient enough. And that's important. Then he goes on from there. He says, Jesus looked directly at them. I want you to think about if you're there and Jesus didn't hide away. He looked directly at you. Have you ever talked to someone and because you were so fearful, you couldn't look at them in the eye? Jesus had the strength to be able to look them in the eye. Looked at them. He wasn't backing down. Okay? Jesus looked them directly at them and asked, then what is the meaning of that which is written? He's quoting scripture to them. Okay? And he's quoting from Psalm 118, verse 22. The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. In other words, he's saying, I've given you enough evidence. Now you're going to reject. If you reject, okay, this has become the capstone. Meaning, a capstone is when you're finished. You put the capstone on when you're finished. And so what that means is the capstone, I'm done with you. It means God cannot do anything more with you because the capstone. You've rejected the stone, the stone the builders rejected, mean to build further in growing your faith.
my
Jesus.
book says
Now
the
become
cornerstone.
Cornerstone.
It's different than the capstone
Yes, it is different.
because that's a foundation that everything is built on. It's the
Yes, it is.
cornerstone.
In my study Bible, it does say or cornerstone.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but they are different. A capstone is you put that on when you stop building the wall.
And the cornerstone.
Cornerstone is the foundation from which you build on.
Right.
So either way, if we look at that, because the words are probably very similar in the Hebrew or the Greek, and I didn't research those. But we'll see that what happens is either way, you can't do any more.
Right.
You can't build solidly without the cornerstone. And if you've put the capstone on, I've decided I'm not going to go any further. Do you know there's many Christians who have said, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this, I'm done. I'm set. They've put the capstone. And they cannot grow, they can't develop, they cannot grow into the fullness of what God has planned or what God could do within their lives. And so we have to look back on ourselves. I know I've built my life on the cornerstone, but I have to make sure that I haven't kept my spiritual life off, that I haven't stopped. And there's so many Christians that in the contemporary church that have stopped. And that's the reason why I know Sharon, that's a particular thing she speaks about, is that we need Bible study, we need fellowship, we need further mission and that, and prayer, deeper prayer life, because that's how we grow. And there's never a time in our lives, no matter how old we get, that we can stop growing. We might be stopped in our ability to do certain things, but we can still grow in our faith. You know, and that's so important.
My Bible right here just says, didn't call it a capstone or cornerstone, but it would mean cornerstone. The stone which the builders rejected as worthless turned out to be the most important.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
Because if they throw out Jesus,
stone,
all you have is what's been given. You can't go any further. You know, if I've helped build some walls, and if I find a stone that's going to fit just right, when we were building our fire pit, it's going to fit just right, you know, and I throw the one out that's flat and just right, it ain't going to look good. It's not going to be straight, will it? You see, and I think all those type of means we can glean from the importance of that. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces. But he on whom it falls will be crushed. Oh, that's interesting. We can fall on that stone, or the stone can fall on us. What possibly might that mean for us? For us, when we fall upon that stone, it may be we are pretending faith.
Jesus being the stone.
So if we fall on that stone and we're pretending and we're not, you know, we get hurt. Stone is hard. Okay? We get broken to pieces because the stone is solid and we're not solid. So we have to ask ourselves, for me anyways, are we solid in our faith? Or are we playing the game, and when we fall upon the truth, we'll be crushed by it. We'll be broken to pieces. Because we find that we could have been more, done more, experienced more. And so we're broken to pieces. When we find that our faith is not sufficient.
But the builders also rejected that stone.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you reject it, you have nothing.
And we're the builders. But he on whom it falls will be crushed. So if you come to the point where you fully reject, well, you may be broken to pieces. The ones who fully reject will be crushed. Showing the importance of being able to we need Jesus. Any one of us, every one of us need Jesus. The teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately because they knew he had spoken this parable against them, but they were afraid of the people. Okay? So he knew that they were speaking about them. So they're the ones that have the facade of religion, and their religion is going to fail them. They'll be broken to pieces. All that they depend upon will be broken to pieces. And if they don't depend upon the truth, who is Jesus, then that stone's going to fall upon them and they're going to be crushed. So the only answer is acknowledge who I am. and also then respond as I have the authority. You know, it's all about authority. So if you reject my authority, you're going to break into pieces. If you reject me, you're going to be crushed. You have no options. You know, so those are your options. Or the third option is accept me as I am. Okay? And watch what I can do with your life. Ooh. Now it goes to the next one, which is verse 20, paying taxes to Caesar. Keeping a close watch on him, they sent spies who pretended to be honest. Oh, pretended to be honest. I love it.
What is a spy?
Spies.
You wouldn't be a spy.
Spies. Pretending to be honest. And sincere followers. I acknowledge who you are. Yes, okay. They hoped to catch Jesus in something that he said so that they might hand him over to the power and authority of the governor. Oh, they've given up. They're afraid of, okay, the people.
Right.
But they can catch him in some political, you know, questionable thing. They could then, you know,
Wash their hands up and turn them over.
yeah.
Yeah,
So the spies questioned him. Teacher, we know that you speak and teach what is right. Oh, isn't that nice? Smiling faces tell lies. They don't tell the truth. Oh, Charlie, you are the greatest guys I ever known. You know, I admire you. I wish that I could be more like you.
Oh my.
You can do no wrong.
You know, so a spoonful full of sugar, right? You know,
Mix and go down.
be careful that, it says in Proverbs, many places, be careful of flattering lips.
Mm.
And I used to teach some of my pastors, maybe I shouldn't say this to you. I used to say that when you go to a new church setting, be careful of the first people that come to speak with you, because they usually have an agenda.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And they usually would say, well, we're so glad you're here because that other pastor.
Right.
Okay? I'm serious. That happens many times.
Well, I know the pastor, the
Yeah.
words didn't seem to penetrate,
True.
unfortunately.
Yep. So we know that what you teach is what is right, and that you do not show partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Wow, what a line. Is that bait? And they think that they didn't recognize, that Jesus wouldn't recognize that? It would have been better if they just got to their question.
Yeah.
You know, we've been struggling with this. You know, we have to pay a lot of taxes. Even Rome, you know, imposes taxes. And then we also have our own religious taxes, right? And the national taxes. So tell me, you know, we've had a lot of conversation with a lot of different people, and we just wonder, does God want us to pay taxes to Caesar? See, they didn't think through their question. You know, because if you think through your question, you already have your answer, right? And so it's so obvious for Jesus. Is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? He saw through their duplicity and said to them, you don't really have to, you know, Jesus was a genius, of course. You know, he had all knowledge, but access to all knowledge, but he didn't have to use much of it to be able to discern what they're trying to do. Show me a denarius whose portrait and inscription are on it. Well, Caesar's. So then give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. You know, I thought about that as I wrote them, and I went to the post office and I sent out my check for my taxes. And earlier this week, that would have been Monday. They were unable to trap him in what he had said there in public, and astonished by his answer, they became silent. I want you to know, if I was really preaching on this and preaching hard, there would be some people who would be really offended, because I would probably focus on give to God what is God's. And some people don't like being challenged with giving back to God what is really God's. And I'm not just talking about financial. Okay? I know a woman connected with this church who has little. And she would fit that story of the widow's mite.
She would?
The widow's mite. Remember the woman
Oh,
that gives the
okay,
widow's mite?
right. Correct.
And, you know, she truly knows and appreciates what she needs to do, not just financially, because some of the other things she can't do,
Mhm.
okay? But there's something she says she can do, okay? That's important to realize. There are some people who, you know, I hear it all the time, you know. I'm not against having boats or snowmobiles or all these things, but all of a sudden when it comes to giving to feed the hungry or some mission to giving to Ukraine or whatever, I'm not pointing at our church here. I'm just saying there are Christians who have all sorts of excuses. Well, you know, I'm on a limited income. I see what your limited income has provided for you.
Right.
Yes. And I had to feel that way sometimes too. I used to, one time we had, for a Lenten program in one church, we asked people to give up a lunch once a week. I mean, they could still have lunch, but the cost of that lunch
Mhm.
once a week as an added gift for a special mission project. Yes, that was at Liverpool. Anyways, it was an interesting challenge for them because the amount of money people will spend going out to eat and then claiming they don't have it. You know, we could give up a meal. There's other things that I could give up. I know I eat out quite a bit. That was just an example. We gave actually several different options of ways that they could give, you know, extra for Lent. And that was just one of them. Okay? And that was very challenging for some people. Giving to God what belongs to God. What belongs to God? Everything I got. Everything that I have.
Everything.
The real question, I never preach, I've had some churches to ask me, some leaders tell me, why don't you preach about tithing? Because I said it's not biblical.
Preach about what?
Tithing.
Tithing.
Oh, okay.
That's Old Testament.
Right, right.
From the New Testament's perspective, it's not how much I give to God. It's how much I keep to myself. Everything belongs to God. And one reason why I'm follow the Wesley tradition is the consistency of John Wesley. And this is, you know, I'll probably get the numbers wrong, but when he first started writing and such, he was making like 28 pounds a year to live on, which isn't really a lot, okay? The next year, it is said that he made twice that. So he lived on 28 and gave the other 28 away. When all of a sudden he was making over 100 pounds a year, he lived on 28, gave the others away. It wouldn't have mattered to me whether he all of a sudden decided he was going to keep 35. That's not
It's
the
okay
point.
if he wanted to do that, but his wife wasn't too thrilled about it. Seriously, you know?
He didn't have a wife at that time.
Oh, we didn't have your wife at that time, okay.
Actually, he took very good care of his wife. He didn't live with her. He, John, there was this widow. He got very, very sick. This is true. All our heroes have blemishes. I don't care who they are; they all have blemishes. John was a hard man. Oh man, you know. Charles had a wife, and he did very well. You know, he took care of his family. He had children and stuff. John didn't. John was sick, very, very ill from his circuit riding, and so all of a sudden, one of the members of the society, a widower, took him in and nursed him and took him to health. Made him well again. Out of gratitude, because she was a widow, he married her. And he then helped care for her, but he got back up on his horse and rode off. So, you know, that's just the story.
You know, he felt he could, that's something he could do, is take care of her.
Yes, he did.
So,
He was gracious, and he knew that really, for the lifestyle he was living, and he challenged his brother this way. And his brother and he had disputes between them, and Charles eventually said, "No, I'm willing to serve here, and I'm willing to do this, you know, for the movement, but I can't do what you're doing anymore to that extent."
Right.
Because he had responsibilities.
Right.
Paul talks about that. I wish you were as I am, he said in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, because he was single and, didn't have that family connection. And he speaks directly about those who are married have responsibilities that prevent them from being free to fully serve. Now that is taken in a Catholic context. One reason why the Catholic priests or nuns also make a vow of celibacy, so they could be free to be deployed.
You can't serve two masters.
Okay, that is a good reason. Okay, how it's worked out and how it gets corrupted is another story. Okay, but I just want you to realize that there's an understanding that there's certain things, like I was asked to go to Africa to do something, and the friend who asked me to go, he doesn't have any children. He has a wife, he doesn't have children. And I said, no, I do not feel that God would want me to go, because I have responsibilities that prevent me from going. And I'm not going to, I'm going to be faithful to what God has given me in my life. So, there's limitations. But also, what I told my friend is that God gave me a gift. God gave me a gift in my marriage and my family. And I have to be a good steward of that. And I've read too many stories of laypersons and church leaders who have abandoned their families, essentially, for the work of the ministry. And while their commitment to Christ is admirable, I feel they fail, because our first work, is to win our families. And, I'm so pleased that tomorrow night, as we celebrate the Seder, that my daughter and my son-in-law, my two granddaughters, will be here. And then likewise, on Friday night, I'll be going to their church for their Good Friday service. But we are family, and I appreciate the gift that God has given me. And I wouldn't trade that for the world. Enough of that, though, I'm sorry. But give to God what belongs to God. They were unable to trap him in what he said there in public, and astonished by his answer, they became silent. Notice he said his things in public.
So they couldn't twist it.
And they became silent. He showed them up. The resurrection and marriage. Some of the Sadducees, who say there's no resurrection, came to Jesus with a question. Teacher, they said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and have children for his brother. Okay? Okay, that is in several other accounts within the Old Testament. Okay? So that he can have children for his brother. That means the inheritance would stay with his brother.
Want to marry.
Yes, right. So when your brother chose a wife, you made sure he chose the right one, someone that you'd also want. All of a sudden you had to fill in the shoes. Now, if you were already married, of course, you couldn't do that. Okay. But what this was, the law from the Old Testament, was that the allotment of land when they came in the Promised Land was set and established and divided, and it had to remain in the family. You could not take it away. Matter of fact, if you sold some land, actually it had to return back to the family the year of Jubilee, 50th year. So if all of a sudden you knew that there was going to be 40 years before the Jubilee, what you pay for that would be different than what if you had full 50 years. You understand what I mean? Because you knew how many years you had to pay back, until it had to revert back. That's because each family was protected. Okay? So also there was not to be a widower that was not going to be cared for. And so if you were a single man, Charlie, and your brother had, a wife, he died, and Lord forbid, you would be your honor to be able to marry his wife and have children with her. Okay? But they would be his son's children. and they would inherit his property. You had already inherited yours. Okay? So be careful whom your brother marries.
But this next one there is interesting.
Okay? So what he's saying is there, he gives, now there were 7 brothers. It always makes me think of the musical, Seven Wives for Seven Brothers.
7 brothers, right?
Yeah.
This is one wife
One
for
bride.
7
One
bride for 7 brothers. The first one married a woman and died childless. The second one then, and then the third, and in the same way the 7 died, leaving no children. Finally the woman died too. Now then at the resurrection, whose wife will she be, since the 7 were married to her? This is what critics like to bring about, okay? To be able to show loopholes within what we believe. Jesus replied, the people of this age marrying are given in marriage. People of this age. But those who are considered worthy of taking part in that age and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage. So we say in the wedding vows, you know, until death do you part. There is no marriage. Now that bothers me because I love my wife dearly, and it might bother you. It might bother, you know, I love my wife dearly, and I can't imagine heaven without her. I won't have heaven without her because she'll be there. But our understanding of marriage is different. Marriage is given to us as a gift on earth to provide us with a sense of intimacy that any other human relationship could provide for us.
But I want to be with him when we
Oh,
go
you'll see him, but you won't be with him in the same way. Okay? And what happens is that we'll have such intimacy with our Creator, we'll have such intimacy with each other, that any other expression of intimacy will fall short.
The one question that bothers me
Go ahead.
is, you know what you did as a kid, that your parents don't know. Are they going to know everything you did?
You know,
Don't kill me.
I don't. You're waiting for your mom and your dad to be there with the paddle and say, I'm going to get you. I don't think that happens. I think you have to worry more about God than you have to do about your parents.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I just wonder if everybody's going to know everything else everybody did. I
Yes.
don't think so. I think
We'll all
only
be
God's going to
forgiven.
know everything.
They'll all be forgiven. And,
Yeah,
and as it says in Isaiah, so your sins are tossed as far as the east is from the west. So you probably won't even remember
all
that.
over.
You confess them in this
Yes,
life.
yeah.
They're gone. You're remade.
Mhm.
Okay. Jesus replied to people. Okay, so they're married and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of taking part in that age and in the resurrection from the dead will neither marry nor be given in marriage, and they can no longer die, for they are like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. But in the account of the bush, when even Moses showed that the dead rise, for he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. So that's another, he's speaking before the resurrection, his resurrection, of the resurrection. Right? There's the obvious, and from the Old Testament, there's the resurrection. He explains that. God is the God of the living. So the Sadducees were a sect of religious leaders who did not believe in resurrection. I will tell you that I've met pastors and religious leaders who would celebrate Easter, but their understanding of Easter and resurrection is different than what you and I might take it to be. They will talk about a spiritual resurrection, but they will not actually, if you press them, believe in a physical bodily resurrection. And you know, I just need to say that to you.
That was one of the big issues back in the Nicene Court too.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between a physical and a spiritual resurrection.
That's right. So, so here, some of the teachers of the law responded, "Well said, teachers," because they believed in the resurrection. So these parties were, you know, here's Republican, Democrat, or here's Presbyterian, here's, you know, Episcopal, here's Methodist, you know, you name it. Here's Pentecostal, you know. So they said, "Oh boy, you got our enemy." So the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? At this point. So some of the teachers of the law responded, "Well said, teacher," and no one dared to ask him any more questions because he had an answer. It may not be the answer you like. I have to admit, I question about, as I said, I love my wife, and I, can't imagine eternity without her, but it's not that I wouldn't have her, but it's not in the same way. We put so much, and one of the ways we measure intimacy in our age is sexuality,
The physical part, yeah.
the physical part. And if you mature enough, you realize that it can be enjoyable, it can be okay, but it's not
Maybe.
the end all.
That's just
Maybe
a small part of
Yes.
your relationship.
Some people chase after that so much, it dominates their life. Look what we see on TV and the movies. People are enthralled by that. I can't tell you how many counseling sessions I've had with marriages in which all of a sudden, but I wanted more. I want more. More what? And I got crude, now I won't be crude here, but the feeling is the feeling that you're going to have no matter who it's with. The difference is the emotional and spiritual or soul connection, as Mike will call it. There's a soul connection with another person.
You have to grow together
That's
over
right.
the years.
Now the sexual intimacy helps to facilitate that, but it's not it's
But
a
it's a
cheap
small,
replacement
very small
for
part of marriage.
right.
Really.
Right. But when you're
So much
when you're
more.
20 and when you're 22, you might think differently.
You're right.
Well, that's true, yeah.
And then there's people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s
Well,
that think
40s are real
differently,
good for me.
too. I'm just trying to the understanding of resurrection is that our intimacy is different. Our intimacy is having unbroken fellowship with the God, our Creator, and also with one another. Those barriers will not be there, and we'll have intimacy like we never can even begin to describe. It's something beautiful to be looked forward to, not look at what we're going to be missing. I had one guy tell me, "Yeah, because there's no sex in heaven, I got to have it now." And I mean, he cheated on his wife and got caught. And I say, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" And he professed to be a believer in Jesus Christ. Oh, I could tell you some stories. Oh, Lord of mercy. Ah.
I don't want to go to heaven, but I want to go now.
I said, well, what do you think Jesus is going to think about that? What do you think Jesus is going to think about that? He says, well, I'll clean up my act. I'll get old enough that I won't want it anymore, and then I have to worry about it. And he'll forgive me for what I'm doing now. I said, it doesn't work that way. The Bible doesn't say that. But that's the foolishness. When people will read the Bible what they want to read out of it, because it's to their benefit, and they'll gloss over the truth. Okay? Because we don't necessarily want to always hear the truth. See? And what happens with that, reason why it says in the Ten Commandments, do not commit adultery. And I would venture to say in the talk about homosexuality, which we're going to do a study on that, it's a breaking of the commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. Because the marriage defined in the Old Testament is that between a man and a woman. And so you're committing adultery. Okay, so that's one of the first arguments that can be made. And of course there are liberal critics of that who will say, well, that's just short-sighted and whatever. But that's the same as what happens is in the intimate act of two human beings coming together, and then it's sealed in a sexual bond, that there's also a soul formation, a soul, which I'll have Mike come and explain that because he has dealt with that quite a bit, teaching on that. And what happens is, I know I've talked to people who've had multiple relationships before they got married. And sometimes they've come for counseling because those previous relationships have obstructed their capability of having deep intimacy. You give yourself away, you give part of yourself away. And after a while, it's not just with men. I've talked to a young girl one time I had to counsel. And what she didn't even, she had relationship after relationship. She admitted to me sitting there in a chair and with another counselor, woman counselor, because I'd never counseled with a woman alone. And she said, I don't even know, so-and-so has said that they love me. And I want them to love me, but I don't know what it's like to be loved.
Right, they get the people grasp the experiences sometimes based on books or television or whatever, or friends or this and that. But they don't really take the time to see where where it leads or where.
I had a conversation just this last week with a mom who's concerned about her son, who is having a relationship so quick. You know, he's away from home, but having a relationship, and of course it gets physically intimate. And I share with her, it probably will not be his last, and hopefully at some point in time he'll wake up. And I know that happened to me, and I woke up, and you know, but you also can regret. Because you don't realize that what you are involved with someone else, it's not just about you, it's about them too. And you can actually cause harm emotionally to someone else by when we're loosey-goosey with our physical intimacy. I also know stories of people who could not have sexual intimacy who are married. Erickson and Tada. Because as a young woman she dove into water and she broke her back and stuff. But she has a wonderful marriage. Never could have children because of that, of course. But she has a deep intimacy with her husband. They're still together because it's not about that physical intimacy. Physical intimacy is important.
I tried living with a man for 60 years. And people don't realize that diabetics
Yes.
become impotent.
Yes.
And but the relationship became deeper.
Thank you for
without,
sharing that.
you know, without. You know,
Yes. I think
the
we
physical.
make our relationships so shallow when we just focus upon the sexuality. But what does our culture do? And that's where we as Christians who follow Jesus Christ, who never was married, and people who are liberals can't believe that Jesus would have a relationship with Mary Magdalene that didn't include sexuality. You know how he's been accused of that. No evidence of that. Because we need to stand forth in that relationships and marriage and such are deeper than that. Okay? But anyways, I've spent enough on that, sorry. Then it comes to whose son is the Christ? Now Jesus said to them, how is it that they say the Christ is the son of David? David himself declares in the book of Psalms, the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. That's Psalm 110, verse 1. Okay? So, I'm sorry, no, that's not right. Yeah, Psalm 110.
So this is the father talking to his son.
Well, what he's talking about is that he's trying to say that he's the son of David, yes, because biologically, genealogy-wise, okay, the son of David will be the Messiah will be the son of David, from the lineage of David. But yet, here, quoting from the Psalms of David, David says, okay, the Lord said to my Lord. So he's talking about prophetically the Messiah. Okay, David being Lord, physical Lord, said to my Lord. So in other words, he's more than the son of David. So Jesus was saying this to help them realize he is more than just a son of David.
Right. The son of God.
Son of God. Okay? And so he's using the Old Testament. So you explain that to me, what this means. They could not. So why not believe?
All through the Old Testament was, they were telling them all through there that Jesus was the Messiah.
Yes. On Good Friday, we're going to read from Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22. And it's going to describe in those Old Testament passages, you cannot help but understand and see the crucifixion through those words. They were written, 600 to 800 years before Jesus was ever thought of. And to think that one man could contrive and fulfill those prophecies, and there's more than just those, takes more faith, blind faith, than it is to believe that Jesus is who he says he is. So it takes, as I've said before, it's one of my favorite quotes, it takes more faith to disbelieve than to believe. You have to choose not to believe if you really are looking at the evidence. Jesus said to his disciples, "Beware of the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and love to be greeted in the marketplaces and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses and for a show make lengthy prayers. Such men will be punished most severely." While the people were listening, so he changes the subject there. So he's saying that he has the right, because he's the Son of God, to judge. And he's judging them. Right? Well, Jesus would never judge. Okay. I'm just going to do this first few verses and then we'll call it quits. It's the widow's offering because we already talked about it. And right here it is in chapter 21. As he looked up, Jesus saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. "I tell you the truth," he said, "this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on." We kind of talked about that already. We tend to fool God. In our wealth, there are people who we can be very impressed because of the size of their check they might write. But in the context of what they give to God and what God claims of their life, they cheat God. Whereas that widow was pure and honest and gave, I'm sure she had more than just those 2 copper coins, but it represented a great sacrifice for her.
She had to give up a lot there.
And that's why I think the point is in our giving, both of our time, our personal giftedness, as well as our financial assets, is the key to love, the definition of love that Jesus gives us is sacrifice. Have I given to the point of sacrifice? When all of a sudden, and there's a contemporary song, says the guy says, throw 20 in the plate. Okay? Then he goes along the street and he sees this poor homeless widow. Do you remember the song? It's on Family Life. Can't remember who it's by now. And he says, "I came to look at her eye to eye. I rolled out my window." And it was more than just one in this world.
Mm-hmm.
The name of the song is, I'm trying to remember the name of the song. It's a beautiful song. But it's realization that there's more. And we limit ourselves. And in his song, the songwriter was experiencing how he was cheating God and cheating himself. Now as he drove off, it wasn't just him in his world. It was 2 in his world. We determine, whether what we have, I'm not just talking about money, owns us or we own it. God wants us to be free by owning it, and if we own it, then we also know we can dispose of it. When I come to be challenged to giving, a lot of times I'm sweating. I've been in a time in which all of a sudden I've gone and I was going to do something and all of a sudden, man, can I do this? And I listen to the voice of Jesus. Yeah, you can do this. But, yeah, I hear your buts. And so Kathy and I made a practice in our lives that we give till it hurts. And we still have enough for ourselves. But if all of a sudden, okay, Kathy and I stopped and got a taco after leaving church yesterday, after coming here and doing some things, doing the chicken and stuff. And didn't go to Applebee's. Instead we had $2.99 taco.
Just as full.
It was just as full.
Right.
Just as meaningful.
Right.
and I had time with her.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's all amount of what we assess as most valuable in our lives. And sometimes we can cheat ourselves. Hi there, Sharon.
Hi, am I in time?
Yeah.
We're just about ready to leave.
Well, we've been waiting, it's about time now we can begin.
Okay.
You'll be online though, you can see it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
We went through chapter 21, verse 4. And next week, we'll continue on by looking at the signs of the end of the age. I didn't want to touch into that today because that's kind of deep. We're going to have to take a little bit of time in dissecting that. But we just finished with the widow's mite.
Just a story that, one day it was how God does things. And I had to be down city for something, and you know how when you're coming down Erie Boulevard, there's always panhandlers there, and I thought, and one time I went by and I didn't anybody anything. Well, if I ever get the opportunity, I'm gonna do something. Well, so I went to the Burger King, you get your twofer thing, right?
Yes.
And, there wasn't anybody there. I mean, panhandling. So I pulled up to the light, and this guy come out of nowhere. I don't know where he came from, with a sign. I rolled down my window, and I didn't give him any money, but I said, here's a sandwich. I gave him a sandwich. So he did. Yeah, I told God, I said, if there's one there, I'll give it to him.
Sure.
And he did something, he put one there. And he wasn't there
Before.
at the beginning. He wasn't out there.
My daughter and I know in our family we talk about these things, part of
Mhm.
our family discussions. And my daughter with the girls all of a sudden packed these little bags, okay? And what they would do is when they go by someone, and Lydia would just put, oh, there's one right there. So excited, and particularly with some gals that they'd see out there, and particularly coming out of the mall. We don't go there very much anymore, but there'd always be this one particular gal that would be there, and they'd make sure they pull off and they'd have this bag already prepared. Wouldn't give them money,
Right, no.
but they had some other things in it that the girls collected and they put together as their giving bag. And that was good.
Yeah.
That's
it is.
good. I would be reluctant to give money.
Yeah, yeah.
Silver and gold have I none, but what I have I give to you. And the gifts that were helpful. And I've had some experiences though when I've done that. My big story, she's laughing because she knows the story. I think probably I included it in the sermon, so some of you from might have heard it before. But I was in Corning on vacation with my family, and going down Market Street. It's always fun to go down Market Street. There's no stores that are really vacant. They always have these unusual things because Corning is a pretty prosperous town, city. And but there's some neat things. And all of a sudden we were going, and we thought, okay, we'll stop and have a sub for lunch. We had our kids with us. And so all of a sudden I went by, and there's this guy that had a bicycle. And he was walking to the bicycle, and he had bags of stuff on the bicycle. So I figured he was homeless. So I went up to him, and I said to him, are you hungry? He says, yes, I'm hungry. My family and I are just going over here to get a sub. Would you like a sub? Yeah. So I went over, and I bought a sub. And I wanted to make sure that it was something that was healthy, So I got a turkey sub, okay, which is turkey's good for you, good protein. And I brought it back to him, and I handed it to him. And as I handed it to him, he says, well, what kind is it? Turkey. I don't eat turkey. I said to him, are you hungry? Yep. I think you'd eat turkey. He would not eat turkey, so I gave it to a college student. I was also walking down the street, but it is, I don't know, that just kind of soured me a little bit.
If you're hungry, you eat it.
If you're hungry, you eat it.
I was driving into Walmart one day, and there was a group of young people there, probably 4 or 5, and they had their backpacks, and they had a dog on a leash, and they were sitting there, and I went, I wonder, what they're doing. It looked like And so when I was in there, I bought a jar of peanut butter and a box of crackers, and I think a box of cookies. And when I came out, I pulled up, I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, oh, we're doing a long walk, hike thing, and, you know, we're resting here, and we're trying to see if we have enough money for a pizza that we can get. I said, well, how about peanut butter and crackers and cookies? And they looked at me and I handed them the bag, and they were the nicest group of kids. I mean, they were like, oh, thank you, this is perfect. I felt like I wanted to bring them all home with me. You want a shower?
You need a bigger house.
Yeah. But, you know, they were,
Yeah.
you could tell they were grateful for that.
Sure.
I don't think they were hurting. They
Yeah.
weren't homeless. They were out on a trek,
Yeah.
something they wanted to do, and you know. But
Yep.
so, but again,
I think that's
no money.
No money.
I'll give.
I tend not to do that.
Yeah, I'll give food, and
Yeah.
unless I know a situation. Where
Yes.
Yeah, that's why when I taught in Union City School, before the school had free breakfast, they would have lunch, but not breakfast. They knew they could come to my room and get breakfast.
There you go.
I mean, because I had a microwave, I had a little fridge, and I always had yogurt and like muffins, or, you know, part of a bagel, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of all the different things I had. Some fruit cup or something. There was always something I had they could eat, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, but some of these kids didn't have breakfast.
Sure. Peter, did she give you breakfast?
Nope, you never
I guess you're old, right, Peter?
I guess you had to go to school.
Yeah, right.
I went to the thing and I got 2 jelly donuts and a large black coffee.
Very healthy.
And he had breakfast, trust
Yeah,
me.
breakfast. Yeah, breakfast.
I
I'm
mean,
just trying to pick on you.
I made my kids breakfast until they went to high school.
Yeah.
Because they had to get on the bus at 6:20, and I said, I'm not giving you breakfast at 5 o'clock. I don't care. And they didn't want to eat at 5 a.m. anyway.
I used to make my kids breakfast, and for Valentine's Day, I would cut their toast into hearts.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
My
My
son,
daughter does that.
but when my son was about 10 or 11, he said, "You don't need to cut my toast into hearts, Mom."
Just leave
Embarrassed by it, huh?
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, my wife used to put, you know, notes and send them to, along with Josiah and Bethany and Josiah, even when he was a, you know, senior in high school. And there'd be a note in his bag, a
lunch
book
bag.
bag, if, you know, if he had his lunch there at school. And she said, well, she asked me, do you want me to stop doing that? Does it embarrass you? And she said, all the other guys, they man, I wish my mom would write me a note.
Yeah. Don't forget to rake the yard. That would be the note.
Then all of a sudden, they started coming over to our house, and we were writing notes for some of the other kids. Anyways, well, but yeah.
My son didn't want breakfast because he had biology lab
Oh.
at 7 a.m.
Oh, jeez.
And who could, you know, eat and then go to biology lab and dissect things,
Yes.
you know.
Well, that's
You could do it. He did it too, he loved it, but
I won't tell. Well, I will tell you the story of my being at University of Albany and having to have a cadaver to work on, and we take our lunch in, and so you put your lunch here, and you had Gray's Anatomy book there,
Yeah.
and you had a cadaver here, and we used to joke about, you know, sometimes getting mixed up and taking a piece of the cadaver, dissecting the
Have
sandwich.
your liverwurst sandwich. No, that's not the wrong liver.
I won't go there. Anyways, let's have some prayer. Gracious, loving God, we just thank you for who you are. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you for bringing Sharon our way. We look forward to her joining us again, and Judith when we have another study. We ask that you might be with us during this Holy Week, and that you make us sensitive to your movement in our lives and the potentials of what you can do in others' lives. Draw us close to you, that we might find that deep intimacy that you long for us, that truly satisfies. For nothing in this life satisfies as much as the true love that you provide for us. And this we proclaim in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I got company at 11:30, pulled in, and I thought,